it's a very basic thing. I'm sure most of you have dealt at some point in your life with phishing or heard about phishing. And I just found that this is to be interesting as while responding to a particular incident. What we're discussing here is basically about looking at indicators and how we can dismiss some of those and what the dire consequences that they may have while dealing with an incident. So in one of those things, I mean, just to go over phishing, I'm sure you most are familiar with, but just an overview. What happens is that a typical phishing campaign, you get someone who spoofs an email address that could be either something familiar or something that could be an internal to the business. And by familiar, I mean it could be from like the post office or any internal department within an organization. It will have a subject that will ask you to click on it because it either has a sense of urgency or because it is something interesting to you. So it might be a failed delivery because you want to, you want that last minute delivery. So you want to click on that and find out what it is. Within that link, within that email, there will be a link. You click on it, and that will take you to either a redirect page or a malicious page that has a login portal. And that login portal will basically take you to ask you for credentials because it wants you to accomplish something. The sense of authenticity to these phishing emails increase day by day, and the sense of urgency to them depends on the organization, and they do become very sophisticated, sometimes very difficult for anyone to actually decide whether they're legitimate or not. When it comes to analyzing and containment of a phishing email, despite having numerous security measures, and we all have email security gateways that will analyze emails and will block a lot of content, some of those phishing emails do tend to get through. That is inevitable. No one can basically prevent all type of phishing emails from getting into an organization. The security, the SOC within an organization will become aware of these by two means. Either usually they will get reported by a member in the organization, by a member of staff, or because you have alerts that they may get triggered. Someone clicked on an email, something is suspicious, and the SOC will get alerted by that. The analyst will look at that email, analyze the content, and find out what are the IOCs, where indicators of compromise. Usually the phishing link, find out the email address that is basically is being spoofed and is not where it comes from. Some of the sophisticated phishing email utilizes more than one IOC, so you could be clicking on one link, you get redirected, or it could be a simple case of clicking a link, you're presented with a portal, but then your credentials are not saved within that portal, but basically are sent somewhere else. And this utilization of multiple IOCs, it's a way to circumvent security within an organization or a SOC analyst from being able to determine exactly what they are dealing with, and basically to confuse even the user, because while being redirected, it would be very difficult to understand what is exactly happening. It normally will be up to the analyst who will open the email, examine the headers, examine the subject, and the IOC to follow everything into that steps. I mean, within some SOCs or some organization, you can send a phishing email to a sandbox and find out what is going on, but even there are measures within emails to circumvent that, and you will not be able to see exactly where all the credentials end up. The key point here is to highlight the human aspect to this, and how important for an analyst to understand exactly what's going on in that email in order to be able to take the necessary measures against that phishing email. That takes us to the other important part of what I want to discuss. During a very interesting phishing campaign, I found out this, and this was something that is being highlighted after doing some research around it. You all I'm sure all familiar with Telegram. I mean, Telegram is a very popular messaging app that has been used for various reasons. It provides certain layers of security, and it could be a preferred method of communication for a lot of people. Telegram, like some other applications, offers APIs, and these APIs can be used to create programs, bots, that you can use the same messaging service to actually communicate with these bots. What I have seen is that in a number of phishing emails is that these Telegram's bots have been used to harvest credentials. So they are essentially a method for taking credentials out of an organization. And it seems to be a very effective method. The credential entry forms that we discussed in those IOCs that the user clicks on, instead of sending those credentials to a secondary page where you can easily follow, or to save them in that same page itself, they actually are being sent using these APIs to those Telegram bots. And then the threat actor is able to go and take these credentials out of those bots. There are actually a number of articles, a number of work has been done in this regard by researchers online, and there are methods for how, once you understand how actually it works, you can actually go and take the credentials out of those Telegram bots. And that's a very good way, because you do want to know if any of your user credentials are actually being harvested within those Telegram bots. The issue with using this is not just the fact that it's a very easy and quick way, is that from an analyst point of view, if you actually were looking at this, you could very easily dismiss this indicator, this API Telegram.org, for various reasons. You could associate it with misuse of company network, which is not something you want to deal with at the time when you're dealing with a major phishing incident. So you could very easily dismiss that and decide that you want to go back to this at a later stage, and perhaps pass it to the awareness team to have a discussion with that user to actually educate them that, or raise their awareness that they should not be using Telegram while in a company. In other organizations, there was actually legitimate use for using Telegram, because imagine a news organization, they may have sources that Telegram is the only way to communicate with them, because they are in a foreign country that circumvents other type of messaging and communication. So again, you could very easily dismiss it. And for this reason, I think this particular type of credential harvesting does pose a danger to organizations. Now, we come to the fact why people use Telegram bots, or threat actors use Telegram bots. They're very easy to set up. It doesn't take a lot of effort to set up a Telegram bot. There is actually documentation by Telegram on how to set up a Telegram bot. This is not, they're out there to be used for good purposes, but then, as with anything else, there can be misuse associated with it. There is a little cost associated with creating a bot. It doesn't really require much effort or a lot of money. They're difficult to detect because you don't want to create an alert that every time there is a Telegram IOC appears in your network log, you get an alert, because as for reasons that I explained previously, there might be a legitimate reason associated with them, and this will create a lot of false positive. And the last thing you want is to overwhelm your SOC with a large amount of false positive, because after a while, even when a legitimate one comes through, people will tend to ignore it. They may be overlooked when examining a phishing campaign because, again, for reasons that I explained, that you might just decide there is just a misuse, and you decide that you don't want to deal with this now while you're dealing with a real incident. Again, the other thing which is done across most organizations is blocking them, as you do with most malicious IOCs. You if you do block them, if there is a legitimate use or there are some people who are using it within organization, you might block their access. Again, this might cause problem, something you don't want to do. There is a recent report that I've mentioned. I said there is a lot of discussion and talk about this online, that it has seen a huge rise in using Telegram bots for harvesting user credentials within an organization. In fact, between 2021 and 2022, I think the increase is about eightfold in number of phishing campaigns that utilizes this type of tactic in order to harvest credentials. In conclusion, as we all know, I mean, this is not something that I think I need to tell the audience here, is that phishing still remains a threat to any organization. The last thing you want is either a general phishing campaign or a spear phishing campaign hitting an organization and harvesting those credentials which can be used for various reasons and target the organization. What this shows is that threat actors continue to develop their tactics and expand on how they want to target organizations. On the other side, it actually highlights also how organizations need to adapt to these new tactics by threat actors and keep up to date with what is happening. Otherwise, you could be hit with something as bad as a phishing campaign and not be able to really understand the implication of it or complete the full investigation in order to see all the users there are or all the effect that might have as part of that incident. Relying on static indicators, and by this I mean there are major threat intel platforms, whether they're open source or proprietary, that provide a large number of IOCs that you can integrate within your SIM, build alerts around them, and they get triggered. But these will not capture everything. And this is clearly an indicator of that, because it would be, I won't say highly unlikely, but the likelihood that you will find something like Telegram's API within one of those threat intel might not be, it's not likely because of the reasons of the large number of false positive, the legitimate use, and anyone, they don't want to add that because it would just add a problem to the organization. And the final factor, the human aspect of it, is considering all factors when dealing with a campaign. Any threat, especially with phishing, is to analyze it, find out, and not to dismiss anything, because dismissing any part of that campaign and not following all the trail, where it leads, where it goes to, and how it works, could really have dire consequences of an organization. I have personally taken a very keen interest in this matter, because I have personally dealt with one of these campaigns and found out to be very, very interesting. It was not something that I have seen before. I've dealt with large number of phishings in my life, but this one kind of piqued my interest, and it was something that I just wanted to share with the audience here and just raise some awareness around it. And with that, I thank you all for your time and attention. Appreciate it.